this way. I actually retired about 3 years ago from Microsoft. So I spent 25 years, I'd like to say a quarter century in Microsoft. And some of you are probably not even 25. Maybe many of you are not even 25-year-old. So when I joined Microsoft, you were not born yet. And so I spent 25 years in Microsoft. Before that, I spent just a couple of years at McKinsey, which is a management consulting firm. Then before that, I spent a few years at Stanford University, MIT, and I was born and raised in Taiwan, so I went to National Tsinghua University in Taiwan, which is kind of like the MIT over there as well. So that's sort of a bit of my school education background. And then I spent 25 years at Microsoft, like I said. Pretty much probably in my last 15 out of the 25 years at Microsoft, I spent time working in search engine as well as artificial intelligence. So my team actually manage AI services and products at Microsoft until my retirement. So if you heard about Azure AI services, I started everything back in 2014. And of course, back then, lawyers didn't like me because I did all the things creepy, facial recognition, emotion recognition, those type of things, which is just a bit more of a sensitive at the time, right? So, but that's kind of a little bit my background at Microsoft, and I managed research, engineering, product, and services, right? So those are kind of what I did at Microsoft. And since I retired, I became a faculty at MIT Sloan School of Management, so I teach entrepreneurship and innovation. I also became a professor of computer science at National Tsinghua University. I teach machine learning and AI ethics. In fact, actually, it's the professor part that makes my dad happy. I'm Taiwanese. The parents over there expect you to either become a medical doctor, that's top choice, if not, become a professor. I never become either of them, and so my dad always thought that I was a failure. Until now, I'm almost 60-year-old, and all of a sudden, my dad was proud that I'm a professor now. So that's a little bit sad, but I did what I could to make my parents happy. And so, yeah, and then other than, I still do some angel investing. I work with, I can help startup founders to kind of think about their business model, scaling their businesses, those type of things. In fact, in addition to be a faculty member at universities, I also went back to school to study. So I actually got a master's from University of Oxford, as well as I'm actually also studying philosophy at University of Cambridge now. So I'm actually also a student. I'm just very old. I might be actually the oldest student at University of Cambridge in my college at the moment. Yeah, so that's sort of kind of what I try to do. And again, teaching is just to learn twice over, right? Of course, learning is learning. So I think it's, great to, be a lifelong learner myself. And I think you guys, many of you are just started, so you still have a long journey. But I think, learning is great. Don't stop that.
I keep telling them they're going to work. I read this book once called The 100-Year Life, and it said that we're going to work for 80 years, right? So you're probably not going to have one career. You're probably going to have a few careers over your lifetime. So that's exactly what happened to you. You had a first career, and now you're in your second career and had to go back to school for that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and some of my friends actually kind of made fun of me that, well, Yu-Ting, are you really retired? You're doing all these things. And I just try to tell them, everybody has different definition of retirement. My definition of retirement is more of a, I just don't want to work for someone else. I want to be my own agent, yes. Right? And I want to work for myself, and I want to work on things that I feel passionate about, right? And I want to work with people I like to work with. At work, sometimes you have to work with certain jerks, no whether you like them or not. I'm sorry for my language here. But that's the truth, right? But now I get to pick to work with people that I love to working with, and I get to pick time, who I'm spending my time with, right? And I think that's great. I'd rather be here, spending time with people like you guys, rather than in some corporate meetings, stay all day long, and just to hear something a lot of times probably doesn't even make sense. So.
Wonderful. So I'm going to start with an easy one, maybe not so easy. So when you think about AI and ethics, is there an area of society that you think should not have involvement with AI, and why?
Would you mind repeating again? I just want to make sure
So is there an area of society, right. I want to say health, education, right. I don't know, that you think should not have anything to do with AI, should avoid AI, and why?
Okay, I think that's a very hard question. of course, as a technologist, I would love to say, technology we could use to solve many, many problems, right? So, and but I would still think about, again, try to approach your question a little bit indirectly, from the get-go, is that I think it's still important to think about when we start from the problems itself, right? Don't think about you're going to apply AI for the sake of applying AI. So at least personally, I would not say, you know what, all of a sudden, because we believe technology can solve every problem. Therefore, we kind of just say, all right, AI, great. Now let me pick any problem. Let me look at how AI can solve it, right? I think a lot of times you want to start from the other way around, which is you start with the problem, right? And you look at the problem and say, then you ask yourself, does the latest technology, including AI or machine learning, does it help you solve the problem better, or does it help you solve or provide a new way to solve your existing problems, right? Or enable to solve new problem? Then you try to go into ways to actually apply that. Now, getting back to your question, yes, there are a lot of pitfalls of applying some of the many kind of advanced technologies. And I'm pretty sure some of you might have heard that a lot of people would argue, well, this is still probably up for debate. And actually, this definitely is up for debate, right? So don't believe me or don't agree with me if you don't, is that a lot of people would say, technology is neutral. It's up for people how to apply technology. If technologies fall into the hands of bad people, they're going to do something bad. If it's used by good people, like all of us here, then we're going to do something great. That's up for debate, right? Again, today's not a class about philosophy, so we'll take that discussion off the room. But I urge you to rethink about that, and particularly in the context of AI. In the context of technologies that involves, for example, algorithms, right? We all know algorithms and AI. It can, particularly today's the way we approach AI today is primarily machine learning or deep learning, right? It involves all the data we could collect, we could actually observe from the empirical world. We do know in our empirical world there are a lot of biases, right? Unnecessary biases or unfairness and all these other things, they exist. Right. So in some way, if you start thinking this way, again, you don't have to believe me or agree with me, but in that way, the systems that we build, or the technological systems that we build, inherently there will be, sort of kind of the creators later will be there in terms of in whether intentionally or unintentionally, our values, right, or the value that presented by the data would get into the system. Right, and so I think that's something to keep in mind. So personally, for example, but again, this is just me personally, and I'm sure many of you would disagree. For example, we have seen a lot of examples about AI being used in hiring and recruiting. Right, there's a lot of companies doing great business on that, and I have friends, actually my friends back at Microsoft when I was there, they were doing that. They'd also utilize those technologies. I think that's great. They make recruiters more productive, right? Make interviewers, more more efficient, and they, of course, many of them believe that they can help them identify better candidates. But personally, I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't use AI at all, because I just don't even think human can actually make a good judgment yet. And then now we apply the technologies based on the data. All those data were biased and were unfair. A lot of these are, have a fairness problems, all these, and then we just try to automate that. I just wouldn't do it. But again, this is debatable. I mean, I can see a lot of benefits. But before we, at least from my perspective, before we know how to really mitigate or even address those problems, I will be very wary about really applying those technologies in a very automated way. And again, you can probably make it, then you can probably, you would not be surprised if maybe in the next example, I'm going to say, you know what, I also probably wouldn't want to use that for criminal justice. Again, there were some good examples, some good study about judges use those to help assist with certain decision making. But then again, I'm not trying to dispute or argue the value of those systems, but I'm only saying that when we are talking all the benefits of technology, which we all believe, I believe many of us, all of you here believe the benefits of technology. Yeah. But there's a lot of downside we don't really hear from, particularly not from the tech industry, right? That we actually need to know as well. And not until we actually have a good thinking framework about how we actually handle those, I'll be careful about applying certain technologies in certain solutions. I mean, there are solutions where it doesn't decide, let's say, life or death. That's okay. That may be okay. But think about when you build your technologies. If people use your technology and then somebody gets hurt, somebody gets killed, right? Think about that, right? It's actually very important to think that way. But don't just put off your duty and say, well, you know what? It depends on who may apply my technology, right? Because you still build that technology. I still think as a creator, right? I think it is still our duty to actually think about how are the technologies we created will be used by others. What are the things we can do to make our technology much more ethic proof, right? So that it can be used in the right way. Yeah. But again, I don't have like exact answers, but I do think.
I think these are good examples. Recruiting, making decisions about people, criminal justice. Those are areas I agree with you. We should be really careful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we are INTELLI, so Institute for Technology and Leadership, right? So when you think about these guys, these boys and girls here that will be future leaders in an AI world, right? Different than we are, not that young anymore. So when we started,
you're young, I'm old.
AI was not around as much, right? It was inside labs and companies, but it wasn't, in everyday's life. So I know that a lot of them have in mind working for companies and or opening their own companies, AI-based companies, right? Or using lots of AI. So what is the profile of the leader for an AI world? What that looks like?
I see. Maybe if I may, I will probably try to approach this question more of it's not necessarily in the context of AI, because I see AI just one of, probably one of the hardest technologies today or more advanced technology today, but I think it still holds in general. And I think it is important leadership, and there are different aspects of leadership, right? But I'll use an example. Maybe I'll start talking about this. When I was at Microsoft, I always had engineers came to me and say, Yu-Ting, how can you put me to work with that guy? I write much better code than him. Why do I have to work for him? Right? You probably heard about this, or maybe that's what you think, right, as well. But nothing wrong. But what I share with the person is that, okay, but we're talking about very different skills here, right? There's a skill of writing code, writing high quality code, efficient code, productive code. There's a skill of managing people, and not even that, leading people, right? Leading and managing are also different, right? Being a manager doesn't mean you are a leader, right? And being a leader doesn't mean you have to be a manager. For example, at Microsoft, we actually had two different career paths from a technical people. One we called more of a people leadership. The other one is technical leadership, right? And the technical leadership, a lot of times they don't manage anybody. They really influence people by their technical thinking, by their technical vision, right? And of course, technical competency. But also their way to persuade people, right? Regardless you're doing people leadership or technical leadership, communication, storytelling, it's continue to be important. I know many of us probably like to think, or maybe people who don't study engineering or technology probably tend to think of engineers as more of it's nerdy, we don't know how to communicate, but we write good codes, right? And we are kind of, it's just goofy. Maybe that's true, but regardless how you think about yourself, or at the end of the day, still though, you have to figure out a way how to communicate, right? You have to figure out a way how to tell your story. Even if you go for a startup, right? How to tell your story to the venture capitalist, right? If you work in a larger company, how to tell story to your management, who probably don't even know or never wrote a line of code in their entire life, right? How do you communicate with them, right? And that's important, right? And maybe use a good example, of the importance of that, kind of understanding that is, I also have engineers, like when they were asked to go and explain certain technology decision to the senior executives, right? They try to explain this in a technical way. Obviously, 99% of the execs would just fail to understand. And of course, they would not admit they don't understand. They would just say, I don't know what you're saying, right? They're not saying they don't understand. Then the engineers were like, oh, wow, okay, let me explain in more detail, right? Because you would think it's intuitively, you want to explain in more detail so that people can understand better. But in fact, probably say, yes, 95% of the time, you get a reverse effect. the more detail you go, the more likely confusing you're going to confuse the people up there, right? So in this particular scenario, a lot of times, how do you simplify your message so that you let them feel they understand in their way, right? So you have to speak their languages, and that's super important. If you don't build a skill like this, it's very hard for you to actually even survive. Again, not just in a corporate environment, but even in a startup environment. The storytelling is super, super important. So you know what? If don't make it a blocker for you. Again, what I'm saying is more of there's a reason we are engineers, right? And you might say, yeah, but I'm just not a PR person. I'm just not a great communicator. I think that's totally okay. You know, we're not supposed to be, you know, the best on everything we are, but make sure those type of skills are not detrimental, right? Again, I'm using communication, but again, leadership is all about that. A lot of it is about how you lead people, how you communicate with your people, right? When I first became, you know, when I was probably first managing maybe a couple hundred, when I was managing a couple hundred people, and my chief of staff is always wanting me to do that. Oh, you have to communicate to your team. You have to talk about the vision, your business goals, and stuff like that. And you have to talk about this all the time in every opportunity, one-on-ones, small group meetings, you know, all hands and stuff like that. And I always feel like, why do I have to do that? You know, I just have to tell it once and then I'm done. Right? But I learned that, to lead people, you cannot just make assumptions, right? Because everybody's different. Everybody receive or, understand message in different ways. You have to figure out a way to communicate with them. You cannot expect them to actually just communicate with you with your own way, right? So I actually think these are important skills to have. And again, leadership, it's about how you influence people, and for the most part, right? It's not about your title. It's not about your sort of job grade. It's not about where you work. It's about your ability to influence people. And now think about how you want to lead people. It's how you want to influence people. And then all the skills about communication, right? Again, technical competency is still important. Don't get me wrong, but the appreciation of other skills, that's important. And that's why I see a lot of, at least a lot of my engineers in Microsoft, they were sort of kind of missing on that because they were never told when they were at school or even sort of kind of in the beginning of their career about really, having appreciation of those non-technical skills. And I might even say, for example, if I just use a little bit more corporate languages, right, is that when you get to in working in, let's say, corporate, let's say in a tech company, your technical skill would probably get you to maybe about lower middle part of the company. That's where you compete with your hard skills. But at some point, typically around, around you reach your middle management, those skills becomes, you already proved for yourself. So it's the soft skills. And then when the soft skills is really pretty much what I've been talking about for 4 or 5 minutes about, how the leadership, the communication, how you collaborate with people, right? Don't be that brilliant jerk that you cannot work with people, because we are not, guys, I say this, maybe I'm at risk of, I know we have some professors here, so I'll try. It's like a lot of times, particularly we study computer science, a lot of times we are not necessarily solving Nobel Prize level problem where you need a truly genius. And then sometimes genius can be a little bit weird, like to work with. But a lot of times in the corporation world, we're solving practical problems for the most part. Microsoft, we do work in quantum computing, right? Stuff like that. But other than that, a lot of those problems are practical. So practical is about what? It's about how we put people together and solve the problem together. It's not about who is the smartest in the room. It's really, we want to build the smartest team, but not necessarily the smartest single person, right? How you work with people, how you collaborate, and how you actually identify and then, really are willing to hire people who are better than you are, right? That's also leadership. It's very hard, right? It's very imagine you say, well, I'm going to hire somebody who's better than I am, but what about that person going to replace my job, right? Am I going to keep my job or not, right? So it's very hard to actually even willing to do that, but you ought to figure out a way to do that, right? So again, those are the soft skills we have to accumulate. Once you reach a certain level, if you want to have a broader impact, right, not just on the technology itself, not just on the product we build, but also on the business directions, right, and on how we make more money, not necessarily even make money, maybe more how do we have more societal impact, right? Those are things that you ought to have those skills. And again, even though I'm saying this, I don't mean you just wait until you get there, then you start practicing. No, start now. Right? It's super important how you work with your classmates, how you actually try to influence them. Right? Today, now is the best. Why? You know what? Because you're not a big shot yet. I'm sorry, actually, maybe professors, right? But students, right? But if you can make people follow you, that's probably the best, right? You don't want to have to wait until I'm a CEO, then I get to tell people what to do. That's actually kind of sad if you just have to use that CEO title to make people do what you want them to do. What you want is what? You talk about your idea, right? They are your peers, or they have nothing to do with you, but they want to follow you. They want to actually, work their ass off, excuse my language here, but they really work with you and then to actually realize that idea. That's called leadership. That's a true leadership, right? It's not about because I have a big title, people are going to do what I want to ask them to do. That's probably a little bit more managerial, like it's management, right? And a lot of times, if you really have to rely on that, you probably already failed to some degree. Yeah. So that's sorry, it took you a little longer. But
no, that's great. Here we work. Our curriculum is project-based, 100%. So basically, students work in groups, and they do 4 projects every year. So they must, in order to execute the curriculum, to get their grades and pass, they need to work in groups, in teams, and they need to work with real problems that come from companies such as Microsoft, Dell Technology, IBM, and so on. So they do get the opportunity to practice that a lot, and a lot of them that I talk to, they say that's the hardest part, right? The technical part is easier most of the times than work in a group and trying to solve problems together. So I have a few more questions, but I want to open to you guys so you can have the opportunity to ask questions as well. Who has a question? We have there. Who's going to help me? You comfortable asking in English or you are? Okay. Quem quiser perguntar em português, eu traduzo, se preferir. Tá bom?
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel, and I have a question about, you said you're a professor, right? What's your opinion on using generative AI as a learning tool?
Okay.
You get that one a lot, I'm sure.
I get that one a lot. Well, I'm very positive about that, right? But I have some caveat. First of all, again, being a technologist, I think the advance of generative AI or large language model transformers in the last few years is actually amazing. But I'll come back to that point in terms of there are certain things I also think it's important to consider why we're all super excited about this progress. But I think from the generative AI being used as an educational tool in the context of education, I'm more like, for example, the guideline I give to my students is that I actually encourage them to use the tool. But there are a few asks I have for them. One, you use the tool not to get the answers or get the output to kind of say, if it's an essay, just write an essay for me, right? I'm sure they can do that, right? One, I basically say, you know what, don't do that, because if you do that, we can kind of tell, right? But the key is I want them to use that, for example, at least I personally, I'm not going to say this on behalf of my universities, but at least as a professor, I actually feel it's important that students use the state-of-the-art tools to help them, for example, brainstorm, right? To clarify their thoughts, or even to use that as a tool to actually help them articulate their thought better. Again, everybody's different. Some of us, right, probably including myself, and my son, I have a son who is autistic, right? A lot of times they have, challenges expressing their thought. But, with the tools, they can use the tool to help them articulate their thoughts better, right? So I want to use it in a way but I want the students to be feeling they can be productive at the same time. But I told them that use this tool to be productive doesn't mean that's it. Right, because I want you to use the time that you saved because you're now being productive to really go deeper on the topic that that you're working on. And in fact, on the other hand, I also see this as a tool to force professors, again, just from my perspective, I know professors here, so I'm not, feel free to disagree with me, but it's also important for professors to really actually understand students on their own. So take an example. In the US, there will be professors freak out, so wow, students are going to use it to write essays, right? And we're going to have trouble figure out, like, are they cheating or not, at least. But I look at this kind of say, I actually told my friends who said that is like, you know what? It is our job to actually know where our students are. If they give you some essay, you actually cannot tell whether they use a tool or they write it on their own. That means you're not spending quality time with them to really understand about them, to know where they think about a particular topic, those type of things. So in some way, I think it forces professors to really spend more time to actually have a closer interaction with their students, right? But on the other hand, I think use a tool and sort of kind of really move it to help you with your thinking process, not omitting or skipping the thinking process. I think that's very dangerous. And I do see that's a potential risk. It's like, again, some of us are probably lazy, and I will be lazy, from time to time, right? Just don't think that, all right, I'm going to just use AI. I'm going to just give him the answer, right? So just when you do so, try not to do that, right? And of course, I also ask students when they use AI, be honest, write it down there so we know, right? Would they have used that, right? It's okay. Don't hide it, as long as you use it in the right way. But at the end of the day, even if you try to cheat, you may be successful for the short term, but it's really you who got hurt in the long term, that you just missed the opportunity of your learning because you did not really learn, right? You just use a tool to help you get through exams or essays, right? Or stuff like that. Yeah, I hope that this answers this question. But again, just my personal thought. I mean, I'm sure there are many other professors have really kind of great thoughts about this. Everybody's a little bit differently. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, so many questions. Who has the microphone? Vamos começar aqui, ó. Levantou a mão primeiro. Você quer perguntar em inglês ou português?
Inglês.
Em inglês? Muito bom.
Good afternoon. My name is João Paulo. I'm a second-year student from computer science, and my ira asked a little about AI usage on some areas of society, and I wanted to know your opinion on AI usage for art, because I see a lot of people that say that AI shouldn't be used to create art, and that shouldn't be even considered art. And I see with the recent evolve of an AI, will be in some years maybe able to create whole movies with it. And I wanted to know your thoughts on it.
Okay, first of all, I'm not an artist, and I don't spend enough time in even entertainment segment. But I'll try my best. It is kind of based on what I think, right? And first of all, I think even look at today, I do believe it's important that to recognize and appreciate in appropriate ways. Depends on what I mean, but sometimes it's to compensate or even pay for the fee, or basically just have to appreciate and respect the copyright or the ideation of artists today, where even an AI model, is trained using their work, right? I think that's super important, because that's so kind of the most fundamental, because a lot of the models are trained using their work, probably in the name of common creative, right? And then without really, sort of compensating these artists in sort of appropriate, right? So I think that's kind of one aspect of that, right? And then the other aspect is more, I think your question is around, all right, but how do we think about really these AI is going to create all these arts, right? What does that mean to artists, right? And I would still say, again, I'm not an artist, but I would say, it just more kind of improve maybe in some way a diversity of what we mean by art, right? Before digital technology becomes a reality, I mean, there was no such thing, right? I mean, there's only this more of a physical, art, right? But now, then they start with innovation and all these things. Yeah, people start creating all these digital, arts and digital entertainment. If you even look at movies, right? It used to be just all movies, but then you have CGI, right? And all these, right? So those are all become possible. So it's not like, I don't think it's going to stop right? That people are going to actually use this technology and create or generate arts that maybe may not exist today. But I do believe all the forms of art will continue to exist. And then we all appreciate, for example, at least maybe not all of us, but I believe some of us here still appreciate the old traditional art, right? You go to museum, right? All these artifacts that we see from museums from ancient times, right? They are not in digital form. We still appreciate them, right? And I would still say it would be sad that all of a sudden nobody wanted to create those type of artifacts, on that, right? So, but again, I tend to still think positively about all these digital arts, including AI generated. And again, we can still argue, is it generated or is it created, right? What does it mean? What do we mean by creation, right? I mean, I guess there's probably a reason we call it generative AI. We don't necessarily call it creative AI yet, right? Because it's still generated based on some of the existing work, right? Rather than kind of just out of nowhere, right? So again, from a human perspective, I'm not trying to define here what type of art is actually sort of a better or a higher level, but I do think, I appreciate all levels of art, and I'm not even sure I can claim that I understand art enough, right? But I do appreciate different forms, right? And then I think artists can still, maybe you democratize art a bit more, but I think the artist will be still there. They will be still continue to be very creative, and I still believe that it's going to be still different from what a computer can do, at least in the foreseeable future.
And if you think about, for example, how did we get informed in the past, right? We used to watch the news and television, and that was controlled by broadcasting. Nowadays, you look at Instagram or TikTok, and then you get, informed by that as well. But at a certain point, you didn't know what was a publicity and what was an opinion, right? Influencers, for example. So they decided that at a certain point, they needed to let us know as audience that was a publicity, that the influencer was being paid to talk about a certain product. And I think that's going to kind of happen with AI as well, in the sense that you get to disclaim, okay, this was 100% human-based, human produced. This was half and half. Some AI was used, and this is 100% AI. And as he said, you learn to appreciate different kinds of art, knowing what was human-made and what was AI-made and so on. So I think we're going to get even a broader, like for digital art, as you said, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I think at some point, again, that's not the focus of today, but it will become still interesting in terms of, for example, as part of my study in philosophy at Cambridge, more around AI, that then will be people start talking about what's the rise of a robot, right? And then again, still though, when you have a AI artist, like a pure AI taking some, imagine how does that AI get paid, right? Who owns that AI, or is actually the AI artist, him or herself or themselves, right? So I think these are all quite complicated problems. I don't claim I should know, about these, right? So that's hard. Yeah.
Who else had questions? Somebody?
Good afternoon. My name is Mateus. I'm a freshman on computer engineering, and I'd like to get back to the leadership topic you spoke a little bit earlier. You've talked about a certain spot on one's career where your soft skills got you to the top, and rather than being stuck with your hard skills. So what is a specific trait of your personality that got you to the top of your career?
I think that's a great question. Again, this depends on who you ask for. I mean, you ask professors in business school who study like leadership and all these things, they probably would give you lots of framework and theories about this, right? I'm a practitioner. I turned to be a professor, so I will probably tell you a bit more from a kind of more practical experience perspective. One, I actually believe, maybe I say this, I'm not a believer of there's a specific set of sort of attributes that would actually turn you into a better leader. I'm not saying there's probably some common ones. Like I said, I talk about this, the communication, right? How you work with people, right? Do you care about people, right? Genuine care about people. Can you lead by example? I mean, these are the things that, I know it doesn't really matter. It's not even necessary attributes. It's more of a behavior, right? I think it's important. But I do think that, like, for example, personally, I'm actually an introvert. Right? I actually don't even like to do this. And I've rather talk to people one-on-one. But I force myself sort of doing some of these things, right? And this is when I was at Microsoft, kind of just by merely the needs of my job, right, or requirement of my job, I had to do that. But I used the opportunity to really practice, right? And I think in that way, it's more of a, if you really are ambitious, or not just even ambitious, more if you're inspired to be a leader, then you ought to understand sort of what are the things you don't do well, right? And then you do your best to actually address that to a degree which is not detrimental. But you actually really also understand where you are good at. And then you make sure that you really actually hone that part of where you're really strong and shine yourself on that. But again, you will get the advices from some other people about, no. It's about how you actually conquer where you're not good and you be really good at that, right? I'm more on the camp of, you know what? Yes, the shortcomings, I will address it so that it's, again, I said, it's not detrimental, but I really would focus on where I'm good at and do that, right? So be yourself. It's super important, right? And also be honest about yourself in terms of not everybody needs to be a leader, right? Don't feel bad if you say, what if I don't want to be a leader? I just want to be my own, writing all the code myself and enjoying myself. That's totally great. That's totally great. Don't feel like, okay, whatever career or life you're gonna have, it's yours. Don't model after, okay, let me take it a little bit, step back. It's important to figure out your own way, not just because you don't want to end up as you are actually going after someone else's career, right? You're going for a path that makes someone else happy. Many of us, at least I might have to say, probably in my first 10 or 15 years of my career, I wasn't living as myself. Because you go to work with an American company, right? Being a Taiwanese, right? You figure out, that's how American works. I have to go the American way, right? You have to be super competitive. You have to be very conservative, right? All these type of things. But then I didn't become myself, right? I was just totally, try to sort of, how do you say that, emulate or in a bad way of being an American and in an American company, right? But then eventually I figure out my own way, right? And I realized that I have to do my own way, right? Just be honest about yourself. Really know what makes you happy. I still think it's super important. What makes you happy? It's about writing fantastic code and seeing people use the code you write and doing amazing things, right? Or it's about leading people and accomplishing something amazing that without a team, it cannot be accomplished, right? Or it's about being very famous. Everybody knows about you. That's okay too. Nothing wrong with that, right? But you just have to be clear, and also be clear about what makes you happy today may not make you happy tomorrow, right? So be adaptive about that. And always question yourself. But don't question every day. Actually, I take it back. Not every day. Every once in a while, right? So that's sort of. Does that help? It's just, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting thought about you, and I agree with you. I think we should focus on what we're good at and build a career on that, right? Make choices in your career that value what you have best. And then work to develop what you're not so good at to the point that doesn't become a problem. For example, I'm not a very organized person by nature, but I have to be organized enough so I don't make everybody's life a mess, right?
Or you know how to get help.
Exactly.
Right,
but I'm not going to make a career out of organization because I'll probably not, be my best self. And also when you're trying to do something that you're not very good at, the amount of energy that you need to put is a lot. Versus when you're doing something that you're good at, it comes out more naturally. So you save energy and you can do more things and be more efficient.
That's right. Yeah. And I'll add a couple of things, though. I mean, one is that also a lot of times you also need to know in what environment you can thrive, right? I love to say this, actually, I would love me being, I can go anywhere and be a leader, effective leader, anywhere, anything I do, right? And I'll be lying if I tell you that I am, right? But at the end of the day, at least what I realize even though that took me years, and I hope that it won't take you that long, particularly you're just a freshman, you're thinking about this. I'll tell you, I didn't even think about this when I was 30. so you're already like 10 years, 11 years ahead of me. So, right, is that, you want to work with people who respect you, and who trust you. And then you can do amazing things together. There are 8 billion people on this planet. I assure you, okay, I use myself as an example. I'm pretty sure there probably, I will not be surprised. There are 2 billion of people. If they get to know me, they say, "Well, Yu-Ting is just an idiot," right? That's fine. I probably don't care. As long as I know, if there are like maybe just 10 people, 20 people on this planet that actually think I'm actually trustworthy and I can do something, and then they want to work with me and do something meaningful, I'm totally good, right? So sometimes put yourself with the people that you feel like you can do things together. And of course, if you desire and you aspire to lead them, right, or, I think that's great, right? So I think that's super important. I mean, don't try to please everyone. I remember in my first 10 years of my career, I actually tried very hard to please people, whoever my boss is, right, or my boss's peers. And then I realized, that no matter what I do, there are good people think I'm an idiot, right? So at some point, I more learned this from mistakes. Just at some point, I stopped trying just because, I know it becomes impossible, right? But I hope this kind of helps you with a little bit of thinking about this.
Very good. Who else had a question? Lemos, and then... So there's 2 Henriques. This is Lemos and Marlon. We're going to go Lemos first and Marlon later. Go on.
Hello, nice to meet you. So my name is Henrique Lemos. And today, what we see from these big tech companies, it's that they put such a notable limits for their products. So let's take AWS, for example. They have such great products, cloud products, but their interface is not good. And they honestly don't seem interested to improve it. When we look at the AI market, the big players like OpenAI with GPT, Meta with Ollama, and Google with Gemini, they focus on the bigger picture, so developing the LLM itself. At the same time, they are bringing to the market some smaller projects. So in the GPT environment, we have the store for the GPT, the personalized GPTs, and for the Google, we have the notebook LM. So my question is, are these big companies approaching the AI market the same way they've treated the past products, or do they see a need to not only build tools, but also focus on how they can be applied?
I think this is a very good question. It still depends on what companies you're talking about. Take an example, right? A company that focuses more on the platform side of the business, right? They will naturally more focusing on talking about the capability of their platform, right? And talking about how their platform is powerful, can be so powerful to actually power or enable many other applications. But they may not spend enough time talking about what those applications are or how those applications can happen utilizing this technology. And that's sort of I'm not saying they're doing the right thing. I'm saying that's sort of understandable because they are on the platform business, right? But then if you are in a tech company on a more vertical domain-specific applications, that's where you will be focusing on, would have a different focus, right? But to kind of going back to your initial comment about is the AWS, right? In terms of the technology is there, but the UI is not there, or the user experience is not there, right? And I'm not surprised. Because remember when I started Microsoft many years ago, what I realized was all the engineers would proudly tell you, I am in the Windows core kernel team, right? No engineers will be proud to tell you, I'm actually in the UI team, right? And then what you found is the most junior software engineers who started at Microsoft back then, they all went to UI team because no experienced engineers want to work in UI. Right? Everybody wants to say, I'm a kernel guy, or I'm a kernel lady. And me, I actually felt a little bit puzzled. I was like, wow, but the interface is where you interact with your customers and your users. That's actually super important. I will probably put my best people there, right? All right, and then I think that's good. I'm not just surprised. You know what? Like people just think, we build capabilities. Some other people figure out the UI. That's easy. That's simple. But no, they are not. The user experience, and particularly I think in terms of AI, I think how an AI system interact with us, it's super important. You know, again, there's this long field of human-computer interface, right? This actually, in my personal opinion, it becomes probably even more important than ever. Is this part of how we interact with the AI systems today, right? Yeah, if you look at what's happening right now, it's just still very primitive, right? It's still very primitive. Or for example, if you look at, let's say ChatGPT, right? Some people may argue, oh, it's great. You see, I can talk anything. But do you really think that's the best? Maybe you know how to talk to ChatGPT, but I don't. I don't even know what ChatGPT can do for me, right? Are there better ways so that I can interact with it? Right, and I think that's still a lot of questions to think about, right? But you know, in the tech, again, right now, I personally think it's changing a little bit now. But I would say in the last 3 or 4 years, the tech industry has been focusing and maybe over-focusing on the power of a model. Okay, but let's focus about kind of really having a system as well as the last mile capability to really truly leverage these technologies in the way that it is supposed to be, right? And I use an example of more of a, when I say system means, you know, there's a model, there's a system in between, there's a last mile user experience, right? So a lot of startups on the model itself, but now because the model are converging fast in the sense that unless there's another technology disruption that happens, otherwise, you know what, everybody's going to be pretty much similar, right? I don't know if you have tried, you know, ChatGPT, like I tried, you know, ChatGPT and Gemini, you know, Claude, right, and all these Llama. I don't really feel. I mean, again, they give you somewhat different things, but the qualities are pretty on par with each other in general for the most part, right? Again, all the companies will claim they are better in some ways, but you all know, you get what you major for. If you are number one in this thing, I'm going to create a new matrix. I'm going to claim I'm number one here. Right? And you can always do that. Right? So at some point, I think those are convergent and the models are more likely to become commodity. So again, I could be wrong, but my prediction will be probably in a couple of years, I would not be surprised that all the major cloud providers, if you look at AWS, you know, GCP and Microsoft Azure, they will probably host all the major models that you can see in the marketplace. And at the same time, all the major model providers, they're going to work with all the cloud providers, right, to offer their technology to all of them. Right. Then the key is probably going to say which of the platform providers can actually enable to make it easier for application developers or companies to really build enterprises to build the system and then the last mile user interaction, right? Who is going to actually realize the true kind of AI benefits, right? Again, a lot of hype, you know, hype may be somewhat strong, but a lot of AI announcements you see today, they are like, if you really dig deep, a lot of them are just prototype or proof of concept. And many of them are not really deployed at scale, right? And in fact, I think SEC in the US, I think it's either SEC or FTC, they have now started want to sort of kind of crack down that there's just enough companies to overclaim the use of AI. Right? And to a degree, we even joke, right? You know what, even just simple linear regression is AI. Right? And we're like, you know, or you just talk about AI because you know what, nobody knows what it is anyway. So we just talk about AI. Everything's AI now. So I even hate to use the term AI myself, just because you know what, I mean, today most of the things we talk about is actually machine learning or deep learning. Right? But if actually our users are going to actually kind of advocate a little bit of my thought here is more of a, I think with all the sort of advancement of a transformers, you know, large language model, I think these are great. But in some way, please do not just say, oh, that's everybody's doing, I'm going to do that, right? If you have some thought about how you can do this somewhat differently, right? How you can approach, you know, sort of approaching intelligence problem in a different way, please don't give up. Because the problem I'm seeing today in the US is that, you know what, it's just like everybody's working on deep learning, right? Everybody is working in transformer and large language model. And then very few students are even willing to think about other ways. But I'm actually probably in a minority camp of people believing that I'm not sure solving intelligence problem, even if we know, even assuming we know what it is, solving intelligence problem is just simply a brute force approach. Right? I tend to think about, when one day we do solve that problem, I tend to think that, again, this is my personal belief, I could be wrong, and I have no evidence, scientific proof to prove I'm right or even right in any way, is I tend to think about when we solve that problem, it's more like E equal to MC squared or F equal to MV. That simple beauty, simple equation, rather than today's approach. You need trillions of parameters, right? And then, terabytes of data, and then, of course, huge compute, and it consume lots of energies, from this planet, right, to actually approach what we see today. I don't know if that's the best way. Again, I might be a purist, but I just feel I want to urge you to always think about, are there better ways, are there newer ways of doing this, rather than just follow everyone else. Yeah.
Very good. Marlon?
Good afternoon. My name is Enrique. I'm in the third year of computer engineering here. And my question is, we are moving towards a world where large corporations increasingly influence society in all its aspects. And it is becoming clear that they reach within society on par with what government can achieve, for example. We even have companies with the market cap larger than the combined GDP of some countries. Currently, most of these large corporations are tech companies. So what is your vision of this future where entities that have historically guided society are being put into test?
This is actually a super found or deep question. So I'm going to just give you a little bit sort of flavor of that, because that's actually precisely what I'm studying as a student now. So I would not, that means obviously I don't know the answer. That's why I'm studying, I'm learning, right? But I think you're correct. To add to your point early, there are also companies, you probably know which companies I'm talking about, that who actually consumes more electricity than many smaller many smaller countries, right? And you probably saw the news, Microsoft just signed a contract with the company that runs the 3 Mile nuclear reactors, like the disaster like US had many years ago. They're going to revive 3 of the nuclear reactors over there. And Microsoft actually made a deal with them. They were going to purchase all the energy produced by those 3 nuclear reactors for the next 20 years, right? So they also consume a lot of resources, to do what they're doing, right? And so I think you're right. It's super important that, in a sense that that's why I also talk about why technology is no longer neutral, right? Because once it touches, again, the good news is technology, appears at least technology really can do a lot of things, right? It touches every aspect of our society. That's actually the good news, but it's also bad news. The bad news is that, well, okay, but how do we actually make sure they are used in the right way or appropriate way? How do we seek for the right balance, right? When I say right balance, I mean, again, if you're going back a little bit kind of from a global development perspective, not necessarily just technology, but if you think about global development is, again, there are certain definition of movie. Hey, should we just totally, completely pursue economic development, right? That's a GDP. Or should we actually constrain in a way that we seek for balance of economic growth, environmental impact, and human well-being, right? They don't necessarily go together at all times. How do we do that, right? And again, many countries have gone for just seeking or primarily looking for economic growth, but at the expense of other things, right? But technology is the same thing. Technology brings us a lot of benefits, but it does have an impact. Now you have, for example, let's say when you would want to do a search, you go to type a query on Google or Microsoft Bing. And you can use the same query. You go to ChatGPT, right? Or Gemini. You can probably get the same answer, maybe similar or maybe better, doesn't matter, you get your answer. But you know what? The amount of energy that it consumes actually are quite different, right? So even if you think about environmental impact, right? It's a lot. I mean, I read it from somewhere. It's actually on the news. Like, for example, a TSMC. I don't know if people hear about the company. That's a Taiwan semiconductor in a manufacturing company. That's basically the company that manufacture all the advanced GPUs and chips. They have like 90% market share, right? They consume today, year 2024, they consume 12.5% of electricity generated in Taiwan. But that's already big. But by year 2030, it is forecast they're going to consume 50% of all the electricity generated in Taiwan. So I'm talking about, and that's just the manufacturing of the chips. Now you think about the operating, when you're not just a training, it's even inferencing, right? A big data center, you think the amount of water, right? Not just electricity, also water to cool down the servers, right? To cool down the data centers, at least, right? They consume a huge load of our natural resources, right? But it's somewhat limited. When you think about cloud computing, right? The metaphor of cloud computing is what? It's unlimited, right? It's the possibilities as high as the sky. But no, the reality is that cloud computing is actually underground. There are only that many places you can build data centers, right? There are only that much water or energy you can consume, all right? And we have to think about this totally differently, right? So again, I'm saying it's more you have to balance other things as well. So that's what I'm saying. That's when all of us should stand up, right? Again, some of you will go into work in tech. I think that's great. How you actually learn about these subjects, form your opinion, right? And then now you can influence from inside, right? And some of us may stay outside, right? Maybe in the other part, the segment of the society, or maybe in the government, at least will help with this. But as long as we are educated, we are aware of the issues, and then we can work that together so that the power can be balanced. Because if we don't, right? And I would say this: I was a dumb engineer even just 10 years ago when I started working AI. I never thought about these questions. Right, and in fact, if you go into my old team back then, none of us would tell you that we have to think about energy consumption. We think about how much water we use, and we never thought about it. Just wow, how cool! Like we are like our precision recall is the best, right? We all tend to think about the technical aspect of that. We are not thinking about societal, right, or economical, or environmental, because these has all these. And I think it's important for all of you really, kind of really have the awareness of we are technologists, but we're going to touch everything. So this is not just about technology. This is about economy. This is about political science. This is about political economy. This is about sociology. This is about even psychology, mental wellness, right? And all these things. So that's super important. So I kind of go a little bit more than what you were thinking, but I hope this helps you a little bit. Yeah.
Very good. So I know you guys have classes at 2, right? So I'm going to open for one more question from the audience, and then I'll have a final question. Is that okay?
May I have a comment?
Yes, of course.
Because you mentioned about the school is about projects, right? And so may I make a comment on that?
Yes, of course.
I thought this is fantastic opportunities that you have. And I'll tell you, in my career of hiring all the software engineers, in North America, which school I love the most? Again, I don't represent Microsoft today, so I only represent myself. So don't just quote me as I said, this is what Microsoft thinks. There's a school called University of Waterloo in Canada. They are famous for a 5-year undergraduate computer science program where the students actually spend 1 year doing interns, right? And it's co-op program. And what we like, at least I love students from that school because they have hands-on experiences. And I think this is great that you have the opportunity here. It's really hands-on, super important. And this is actually what MIT try to differentiate us from Harvard. At Harvard, they have brain, but we have brain, we have hands as well, right? We actually do it, we make things happen. That's a difference. Again, I hope I don't offend anybody who went to Harvard here. but that's the importance, the hands-on experience, the real-world experience is super important. And I think I'm just excited that that's the approach over here. And that would really help you, when you graduate and when you look for jobs, people appreciate, the employers appreciate hands-on experience. And also you get to learn not just the technology, right? It's also how to work with people, right? How to work with different sort of people, right? And how to make a team, right? That's super important. That you don't typically learn. Again, from school projects, maybe you work together, but it's still a little bit different from, working in real kind of world. Yeah. So sorry, I just have
Philosophically, when we built the curriculum, we didn't want our undergrad program to be a continuum from high school. We wanted to be something that came before the real life, right? So we started with that question: what do people need to know when they get an undergraduate degree? What kind of experience should they have? Of course, they need to know theory, because theory is a shortcut. In a good way. Like, if you know theory, you get faster to the solution of a problem. But theory alone is not enough.
Yeah, but I would also say the practical experience will also allow you to appreciate theory or frameworks. Because once you kind of learn from examples, then you say, wow, there may be certain common patterns, right? There are certain structures from your experiences, whether it's successful experiences or failure experiences. And then you also appreciate framework and theory as well. So that's why when I teach at MIT Sloan, I always love to actually team up with more of a career professors to teach together, because, you know, I have more of a practical experiences, but they have more of the kind of theoretical and framework foundation, and we put that together. I think that we can maximize the learning for the students. I think that's actually super important in that regards. Yeah.
Very good. One final question. Let's see if you already asked a question, right? Who else? Pode ser outra pessoa que você já perguntou? Pode? Obrigada. Vamos lá, Raul. Português ou inglês?
Inglês.
Tá bom.
Hello, my name is Raul. I'm studying computer science. And in this world of generative AI, you are seeing new kind of business growing based in AI and traditional business using AI a lot. So you can see that in this market, data is the new fuel. So you can see a new kind of market growing, the data market. So in different levels, since nightclubs buying data from restaurants, to Google making data licensing with Reddit and other kind of acquisitions. So I would like to know the ethical side about these negotiations in these different levels.
I think this is a fantastic question, and actually I'm glad I hear a question like this. Let me put it this way. Whether we like it or not, we sort of live in a world of data economy, right? We live in a world of data economy where it's really data. A lot of companies, actually not the companies, actually more just a handful of companies really make a lot of money based on data. Now, we probably should have some offline conversation on this, but I think in general, think of this way. Let me put it this way, is this, let's use Google as an example, search engine, right? We are their user, but we also help them build a product. Right, and of course, some people might say, well, it's fair, you know, they offer search for free, then we offer data to them, they can build products. But here's the point of view. Again, I'm just offering a point of view for you to think about. But in the process of doing that exchange, there's a huge amount of wealth created. Do they come back to us? They don't, right? So it is actually more of a, I'm more of a, this is, if you think of AI or not, but this data economy or not, the wealth that's generated as we progress our society, right? How do we find ways so that the incremental, maybe not even so incremental, it's like this extra amount, like huge amount of wealth that's created, how do we ensure they come back to most of us, not to just the hands of a few countries or companies or people? Yeah, there will be trillionaire. Right? There will be companies worth of many trillions, but that doesn't mean we get the benefits, right? In fact, I might even not, in a way, you're probably gonna know, I'm gonna argue, you know what? Google probably should pay us for us to do search on them, because they actually make a lot of money, right? So yes, we get some free services, but that's not enough, right? But it's easier to say than to be done, right? But we need to have that awareness, because not everybody think this way. Again, I'm not saying this is even the right way or best way, but I'm saying it's important. In the data economy we are in today, it's us. We contribute in a very significant way, but we are not being recognized. right? And again, if you extend this conversation, you might start saying, well, it's not even actually us, right? It's a lot of people that say in the so-called global south, right? Think of this. For example, do you want to buy sneakers that are made by child labor today? You don't, right? You do want to buy any services or whatever is made, again, by inappropriate laborers and all these. No, you don't, right? All right, so then why do you want to use AI services? That's actually curated, right? Or annotated by people in places like Kenya, well, where the pay rate is so low, they will not even be supported, right? And then they do all the work, and just to be enjoyed by all the rich kids in global north, right? And I sometimes joke about my friends, right? That people worry about, oh, my son is using ChatGPT too much. I'm worried about this. And I was like, wow, that's a first world problem. Many people in many other places, they don't even have the opportunity to use because they don't have money to pay, right? Or they don't even have access or reliable access to these services, right? But again, I'm saying that you asked a very good question, but that question would actually would need to be extended to many, many other things altogether. And it's great that you're thinking about this. Again, I think as a technologist, it is our duty, and I do believe that we have a capability to help connect with other parts of the society and build the right thing and doing the right thing. And I think the more we can think about this as an engineer, the better. Because what you don't want is you build something without really thinking too much, and then someone else is going to use that, for different purposes, right? And that's But hopefully that gives you a little bit.
It's like we say here, the fact that you are able to build such technology doesn't really mean you should.
No,
necessarily mean you should, right?
So I'll give you an example of why I think it's hard. And this actually, it was an aha moment, even though it took me maybe 55 years to have that aha moment. And I think it's great that you guys are thinking, many of you are thinking about this now, is when I built facial recognition technology back in 2014, my team actually released the first commercially available facial recognition technology in the world. And we didn't think much about anything I was just talking about. We're just so excited. Wow, we have this great technology. People can use our facial recognition technology for many, many good use, right? But not until we realized, wow, you know what? All you need is a anonymous email. Go to cloud, right? Sign up, and then you get to use, and you can use the facial recognition for many different purposes, including if this is used by the wrong government, they could use that to suppress, right, or surveil their citizens, right? And I don't know if any of you actually heard about this issue called gender shade. There's actually an MIT Media Lab students together with a researcher it's actually intern at Microsoft Research. They wrote a paper about how facial recognition technology discriminate against women and people who have darker skin, right? If you just try to Google it or pin it, just like gender shade, you'll find that, right? And so when I first got that, because one of the technologies systems that the paper criticized was facial recognition technology from Microsoft. So I actually commissioned my engineers and researchers, and of course with some money, we actually went in and spent a lot of time and efforts to improve that, taking that feedback, right, in heart, and then we really redo our algorithms, we recollect our data, we just want to improve so that the algorithm is not biased against women as well as people who have darker skin tones, right? And after 6 months, we did a tremendous improvement. We even wrote a blog and very proud about that. But then I got email from a couple of Black employees at Microsoft. They said they want to talk to me, and I said, okay, what do you want to talk to me? And because I was all maybe you just want to tell me how good of a job my team does, so that our technology, can recognize Black, people better. But then when they showed up, you know what they want to talk to me? They asked me, Yu-Ting, you didn't grow up on the street in Oakland, California, did you? And I said, no, I grew up in Taiwan. And I said, okay, now how do you think about white cops are going to use this technology to use against my people? Because now the technology actually does a better job, right? Detecting and recognizing, right? Think about racial profiling, all these things. And that was an aha moment for myself. I realized, wow, this so-called ethics, AI, or these, they are not just technological problem. You know, I could do all the technology I think is the right thing to do, but depends on how it's used, depends on who is using that. All of a sudden, it is still somewhat problematic, right? So that's why, going back to my earlier point, this is not just about technology. There's many, many aspects of our society, right? We ought to think about this all together. And I think that's important to keep this in mind on that. Yeah. And again, even the AI ethics, right? To your point on AI ethics, you probably hear about big corporations talking about fairness, right? Accuracy, bias, right? Stuff like that. Security, safety, right? But now, a lot of these companies talking about these guidelines or values as if you can move everything together at the same time. No, some of these values actually conflict. For example, if you want to have national security, can you have absolute personal privacy? Likely not, right? So how do you seek the balance? You can just say, oh, I can do both, right? You know, and then when you incorporate other things, when you say, I absolutely want to make sure it's fair, how do you ensure the accuracy continues to improve, right? Again, that's also not necessarily trivial as well, right? So I think these are not easy. I mean, it's easy to say we have this guideline, but what are metrics? How do we really measure that? How do we prove we are really making progress? So these are many things that's super important. But a very hard questions, right? I'm not trying to, sort of downplay it. It's very hard, but that's why we need to think about this, right? If it's easy, that's fine. Maybe say, well, let's actually be the best first from a technology-wise, and we'll figure out the rest later. But I'm not sure, that's the right the direction to do, yeah.
Wonderful. You have to go because you have class, and I want to thank you so much. It was a wonderful discussion. Let's give him a round of applause. Would you mind standing here with me for a photo? Yeah? Okay. Todo mundo levanta para tirar uma foto com você? Um minutinho. Vem, Ana, vem, Mari. Here.